Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of Mompreneurs, the real deal, where we get real and raw with all things mompreneur. I'm Dr. Sarah Breen.
And I am Jen Goday, and today we are going to get Jen really uber uncomfortable about our topic of discussion, so I'm going to let Sarah take this one.
This is the true definition of real and raw because Jen did not want to talk about herself. And today we're going to throw it back to what made us us. So I'm going to go ahead and start out with asking Jen some questions that she's super uncomfortable with, but that'll make it real and raw. Jen, can you start us out in the beginning for you? Take us back. I know, you originally started out in a completely different field than you're at now. So can you just kind of tell us what molded you and how you became where you are now?
Yeah, sure. So, I knew I wanted to go into medicine. I knew I was going to be in sports medicine at a very early age because I was an athlete. I did not think I would be an entrepreneur. I did not think that I would end up where I am today, but I had a pretty clear, I was like the person who had the plan. I'm going to go into sports medicine. I'm going to work with professional athletes. I'm going to be the top of my game. I'm going to be the best that I can be. And that all kind of happened. And it took a lot of work and a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. But what also happened was back in the day, I was told that it would take 2 years to get into medical school for physical therapy because it was very, very competitive. And I was married and wanted to have a daughter. And in my family, we have to have kids early because we have a lot of female issues. And most of the women in my family have a hysterectomy before the age of 30. So when I knew that it was going to take 2 years between college and medical school, I'm like, perfect. We'll start our family now. So lo and behold, who gets in on the first try? I do. And I now have an infant and I'm in medical school. So that was the first oh my God, what am I going to do situation. And it was really hard to make the decision because I had two choices, right? I could either choose to put it on hold and risk never getting in again, or I could go forth and deal with everything that ensued. So of course, long story short, I went in, I pursued, I did everything I needed to do to get to where I was in sports medicine. And I got out and, very quickly had a business and realized I didn't know anything about business. They don't teach us about medicine and business. They don't teach us about business and medicine. Sorry, I said that wrong. And so I was literally the entrepreneur who had, at this point in time, a young child, like a 4-year-old when I started. And then, beyond that, and I'm trying to fumble through a clinic and how to run a clinic and how to hire people. I knew nothing about that. And so it was a learning by fire kind of situation. But I'm a high performer, and I know you've heard this from almost every woman that we've interviewed so far on this show. And if I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. So I did everything I needed to do to become the top and felt all the guilt and all the things and kept forging forward. And, fast forward a long time, and 20 years later, I retired medicine and went full bore coaching. Because I realized that I could impact more lives by helping other people to optimize their business and really make a change in the world than I could in the field of medicine. So that's like the short, uber dirty version.
And did you know at some point during your medical career that it wasn't the end all be all for you, or what was that shift?
Yeah, so I have distinctly recall. It was 2012, and I had been in it for quite some time, and there was a 12-year-old girl who came in, and she had an ACL tear. 12 years old. And I'm going to go a step further and say she was type 2 diabetic, and if you looked at her family, I could assume that that's the case with the entire family. It was a rude awakening for me because here I am in sport medicine trying to help people become the absolute best that they can be, but yet what I'm doing isn't doing anything against what's really happening in the world with public health. How is it possible that this child was in competitive sport and injured herself and she had all these unmanaged situations? Now she's had a surgery and, for those of you who don't know, diabetics heal a lot slower. It's a lot longer of a process. And when you're a 12-year-old girl, and we're all moms, and we've all been 12-year-old girls, middle school girls are mean. And it's hard. And we already have someone who had a body image issue, and now she's not able to do sports. And so, there was just a whole lot involved in there. And that's when I realized that our healthcare system is failing us. It's really sick care. It's really not doing anything. And I knew that I had kind of got to the point where I knew everything I could know, and I didn't have to think in sports medicine very much. Because I've been doing it so long, and anybody who's an expert in any space and does anything, I mean, you with pediatrics, you probably don't have to think very much when you're doing pediatrics because you've done it for so long, and you just challenging, and I like a challenge, and I wasn't making a big impact anymore, and so that was the first shift, and then the second shift happened because of a personal situation. It was 2016. I hadn't gone on a vacation in God knows how long, because for those of you who don't know, when you're in medicine, like you work like 70 hours a week and you take care of everybody else. And we've talked about on this show putting ourselves on the back burner. I was not even on the back burner. I fell off onto the floor and was splattered across the tiles. I was always in pain because I had a physical job. I was always worried about my daughter, about my spouse, and everybody else on the downtime, and I never filled my cup. And so I was extremely burnt out, and we had a vacation planned for the first time in God knows how long. It was one of the first trips my husband and I ever did together without a child. And for me, it was, we're going to reconnect. We're going to have this reconnection moment. It's going to be great. And we pretty much fly to this private island. It's supposed to be all this romantic thing. And that night at dinner, my husband was like, I can't do this anymore. I love you, but this is not working for me. And so literally, I have all these great hopes, and I'm faced with, I want a divorce, pretty much. And so I knew that at that moment, I had to make a change because I am a high-performing, high-achieving, and very passionate about helping people individual. And I also am at the top of my game, and I will not do anything but be at the top of my game. So I knew I needed to shift out of that because I wouldn't be able to throttle enough to focus on me and what matters most in my life, which was my spouse and my family. So that's what really was the impetus between retiring in 2017. And it was really hard.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think, and we've talked about it before, it just takes away a piece of your identity because, going into medical school, you think that's who you're going to be.
For the rest of your life.
Correct. There's no alternate. I mean, it is what it is. It's just one field. It's very consistent. And so I'm sure it was a struggle for you to, to step back and say, okay, what else can I do?
Yeah, and there's another piece of it, Sarah. Like at first, it was kind of cool and liberating when I was like, oh, I'm no longer be doing this. I don't have to deal with other people's sweat and other people's pain and all of these things. But there was so much locked up into that because it's not a short process. I mean, it was like 7 years of schooling and then 20 years in the field. And so when you've been doing something and you looked forward to it for so long, and all of a sudden you realize that, number one, it's not challenging me, and I love a challenge, and I love to learn, and I was kind of stuck there, and I'm not making the impact I want to make, and I'm about to lose everything that's most important to me, and that means I have to give up everything that I know. Like, it's almost like there's an exhilarating part of you, and then you feel guilty because you put so much of your time and your effort, and you look at, I've put in like 27 years to this. And when I was in, high school, doing all the volunteering and things to get along the track, like it's a lot of time and effort and blood, sweat, and tears. And I was successful. To think about starting over, and make no mistake, folks, I own multiple businesses now. Every time you start over, it's starting over at zero. It doesn't matter. You're always starting over at zero. Yeah, you know more, you have more knowledge, maybe you have more personal branding, but you start over from scratch. You're no longer the top. You have to build your way back to the top. It's really, really hard on that piece to step back and say, okay, I got to go back to like being in, school and figure this stuff out.
And what about, and I mean, we can talk about this later too, but in terms of when you decided to leave that, was there any issue with that with your family? Were they... Just guessing. Were they concerned that you were leaving something that you spent so much time in?
Yeah, so every peer, colleague, all my friends were in medicine. Everyone I spent all my time with and my family thought I lost my mind. Why on earth would you give up a lucrative career in sports medicine, working with Olympic professionals and collegiate, like you're at the top of your, why the heck would you give that up to start over and just be a coach, which was very hard for me because honestly, Sarah, it was my whole life. It was everyone in my support network. And quite frankly, my husband thought I was nuts too. So I was doing this for him to save our marriage, and he didn't believe in my ability to be successful in that, or that it would become anything. So like I gave up not only my career and what I was doing, but also my entire support network.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think, I mean, it takes away your own confidence in yourself. It has to. I mean, it's some little piece that chips away. If someone had said, your mom had said, hey, I'm so excited for your next step in life, that it would have felt differently. It just doesn't feel the same when everyone says what's already, and part of it is already in your head. I think that's the piece that is truthfully there, is that, you felt like, hey, this is what I studied, this is what I'm going to do for my life. Oh, am I going to be able to shift? And then everyone else says it out loud. Mm-hmm. I think that's part of it.
It really is. And I know we have to break for commercial shortly, but the other side of this is, like, I had been divorced because I was my first husband, the father of my child, really couldn't deal with the fact that I was a high income earner and a successful person. So I already harbored some of that old trauma. So when it was echoed by every person pretty much, and while my husband is amazing, he didn't mean to have it come off that way, like the fact that he didn't believe in what I was doing. Oh, I believe in you, but I don't believe in what you're doing. It really set me back so strongly, and it was almost like I had to climb an extra mountain in my own self-belief, and like we talk about resilience. You have to dig deep when you do things, especially if you don't have a support network. So I think if you're listening to this and you're feeling this, or you're looking at a shift, and it happens in every transition, it is so incredibly important that you get back into, like, who are you? What do you want with your life? And how are you going to shape it? Because sometimes we have to just put that pack on our back and trek up that mountain ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. At this point, we do have to take a brief break, but when we come back, we will dive more into Jen Gaudet and what makes her.